Good afternoon, and welcome to the first in a series of webinars on the English Language Arts English Language Development Framework. We are focusing on comprehensive literacy today. I'm Nancy Brynelson, one of the two co-directors of statewide literacy in the California Department of Education. Today we have several of you here. We had over 700 people registered, and we'd like to know who you are before we formally begin. So you will see a poll. You indicate your role.
And the poll is, who is joining us today? Classroom teacher, paraprofessional, parent, instructional coach, librarian, community liaison, administrator, county office staff, SEA staff, or higher education faculty.
So we'll just give you a moment to complete that. And when you have some responses, Bonnie?
We are at 79% here. I'm going to give it, waiting for 80. There we go. Okay, I'll end the poll. Share results.
Okay, so we have lots of administrators, county office staff, classroom teachers, thrilled to have classroom teachers here today, coaches, all of important people. So thank you very much. Beginning this series, we have two very special guests. The first is Cheryl Cotton, who's Deputy Superintendent for the California Department of Education. I'll introduce her, and she'll have a few remarks and then move on to our next guest. Ms. Cotton is the Deputy Superintendent for the Instruction, Management, and Administration branch at the California Department of Education. And her divisions include curriculum frameworks and instructional resources, assessment, state special schools, equal education, equal opportunity office, and educator excellence and equity. She has a rich background as a classroom teacher, principal, district administrator, and county office of education administrator. And so we're so glad you're here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. We are beyond excited to kick off the ELA ELD Framework webinar series, which is the grounding literacy policy document in California. We're even more excited to have for you three of the authors of the framework itself. As you know, our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, has put literacy at the forefront, investing significantly to ensure that students are reading by third grade and beyond. In addition to multiple grants such as ELSB and CLSD and the Literacy Coaches and Reading Specialists grant, among others, State Superintendent Thurmond has invested in two new statewide literacy co-directors. You just met Nancy Brynelson, and you'll also meet Bonnie Garcia. Our statewide literacy co-directors have been hard at work. Some of the things they've been doing, they've been developing and providing this much needed ELA ELD Framework webinar series. They've been collaborating with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing as liaisons on the Teacher Performance Assessment Design Team and revising the program standards for the Reading and Literacy Added Authorization and Literacy Leadership Specialist Credential. In addition, they've been working on the screening for risk of reading difficulties like dyslexia. They've also been collaborating and developing the literacy roadmap with the State Board of Education. So many great things are going on around literacy in California, and we are glad you are here with us today participating in this journey. Before we move into the content of the webinar, I am proud to introduce Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, a key educational leader and pivotal in the goal of ensuring our students are reading by third grade and beyond. Dr. Darling-Hammond.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. And it's such a pleasure to be here. I am very excited about this series. and I hope people will be able to tune in for all of them. They really expand on all of the elements of our English language arts, English language development framework, which we, of course, call the ELA, ELD framework, which was put together in 2014. You're going to meet the authors. And we really appreciate the work that has gone on here. California adopted the science of reading back in 2014 when we adopted this framework. And it really transformed much of what has been going on in California and will be what we build on as we make additional investments in literacy in the state. Some of you may remember that back in 2013, we were 48th in the nation in fourth grade reading and 46th in eighth grade reading in terms of the rankings. We had a long way to go. We are the state that has the greatest gains in eighth grade reading over this last decade, and one of the 4 states that has had the greatest gains in fourth grade reading over this decade. We've been building on the work of the framework, which really gives us not only a way to understand the active teaching, reading, writing, speaking, and literacy for native English speakers, but because we blended English language development into this, it also addresses the literacy acquisition for multilingual learners who are now more than half of our entering kindergartners. So we are a pioneering state in that regard. The framework, of course, was not the only thing that happened in that period of time. There were other investments that have been guided by the framework and more to come. And we'll have a chance to talk about those during the series as well. But one of the things that we should be aware of is that, as was noted, the framework has guided the California Teacher Credentialing Commission in building what the pre-service teacher education programs should be in terms of the way in which we develop a knowledge base about literacy instruction. That's being updated yet again right now, along with the performance assessment. It has guided the work of the 7 literacy lead agencies that provide support around both early childhood education, K through 5, and secondary school. We think about literacy as extending across all of the grade levels in all of its manifestations. It has shaped the work of the dyslexia initiative in California and will be essential as we also develop more investments in reading intervention. So this is sort of the heartbeat of the work. I'm thrilled that we have not only today, but a whole set of dates on which to explore it fully. And we'll talk more throughout this series about the ongoing and new investments in literacy instruction that are going on in California. And with that, I think I should hand this back to Nancy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Darling-Hammond. And for those of you who might not have had the opportunity to meet her before, not only is she the president of our State Board of Education, but she is Professor Emeritus of Education at Stanford University and the co-founding president of the Learning Policy Institute and a renowned scholar in education policy, teacher education, professional learning, and more. So thank you so much for those comments. And thank you, Cheryl, for those comments. We feel so supported in the work that we are doing and look forward to getting even busier. I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the panel for today. And the 3 of us, Hallie Yop-Slowick, and Pam Spiescher and I were the key writers for the framework, but we didn't do it by ourselves. We worked with, and you'll hear more about it, a framework committee. And I just wanted to give you just a thumbnail background for each one of these individuals. And you see Bonnie Garcia. She is my partner, co-director for statewide literacy. Hallie Yop-Slowick is still a professor at California State University, Fullerton, starting to do early retirement. She teaches literacy and reading courses for teacher candidates. She has written several books in the area of reading, has a specialty in early literacy, and has done research in aspects of phonemic awareness. And I particularly admire Hallie for her ability to translate research into practical advice for teachers. Pam Spiescher is a senior research associate at West Ed, where she has been pivotal in not only helping to write the framework, but also the ELD standards, a couple of key documents that have come out since the framework, improving education for multilingual and English learner students. She led that project and was a key writer for the Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities. And so as a threesome, we have tried to pull it all together. Just a little about me. Many of you know me already. I used to be a consultant at CDE. This is my third stint, but before that, I was at the California State University, co-directing the Center for the Advancement of Reading and Writing, and that was with Hallie Yopp for many years. I've also been a classroom teacher, a school principal, a district office administrator, and happy to be with you. After many years of experience, I can't stay away. And then Bonnie Garcia, a wonderful addition to our group. She most recently was a program specialist and literacy specialist at Desert Mountain SELPA. That's in the area of the Special Education Local Plan area, and where she established a literacy improvement network for the 40 school districts in the SELPA. She's served as a structured literacy and dyslexia interventionist and is an associate with Orton Gillingham. She's provided lots of professional learning for teachers relative to dyslexia and providing effective intervention. So we are your team for the next several months, and you will be hearing from all of us. And thank you for being here. I'd like to just share with you what we're going to do today. You've just heard our welcome and opening remarks. Bonnie and I plan to share with you a bit about what our office is doing. Cheryl provided some of those details, and that was very helpful. And then focus on our theme for the day, which is comprehensive literacy. We'll be talking about how the framework was developed, and the organization and content of the framework. Specifically, you'll hear Hallie talking about the circles of implementation and resources in the framework to support instruction. Pam will pick up and talk about integrated and designated English language development and more resources to support instruction in literacy. And finally, I'll finish up with some practical uses of the framework. Pam will introduce you to that, and we've prepared lots of things for you to examine, and then Bonnie will close us out. So we have some outcomes that we'd like to share with you, 4 of them. We would like you, by the end of this session, to understand the definition of comprehensive literacy, the elements depicted in the circles of implementation that Hallie will explain, to be able to identify the resources in the framework to support instruction, maybe in your own classrooms, in your own schools and districts. Understand the definition of integrated and designated ELD, and of course there are 5 outcomes, and our next steps, what your next steps might be for diving deeper into the framework. Okay, and so I'll turn it over to Bonnie to talk about our office.
Thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. Cheryl, Deputy Superintendent Cheryl Cotton, for the welcome, and Dr. Darling Hammond for being so inspiring and for your continued leadership. around all things education and especially around literacy. As was noted a bit ago by Deputy Superintendent Cheryl Cotton, we are fortunate enough to have a superintendent who has invested significantly in literacy and ensuring that our students are reading by third grade and beyond. And so it's an honor to be a part of that effort, Nancy and I as statewide literacy co-directors, and to be here with everyone who's watching, everyone who's gonna watch, with the and with all of the folks who are investing in education. And so a part of what Nancy and I have been doing at our literacy, as our statewide literacy office, due to this opportunity that we're given, is implementing a statewide literacy campaign to ensure that all California students are reading by third grade and are fully literate by the time that they graduate from high school, as well as promoting evidence-based literacy instruction and promoting statewide literacy campaign goals. And those goals are achieving coherence. What is evidence-based literacy instruction? And building coherence around what that is. Also coordinating and aligning state, regional, as well as local level initiatives and implementation, which goes along with that coherence. And also, and very, very important, addressing equity gaps that we often see permeating our data around literacy and other subjects, but we're sticking with literacy today. So very happy to be here, to be talking, to be introducing these goals, and also in order to achieve these goals and ensure that students are reading by third grade and beyond, one of the activities that Nancy and I decided on was to provide this series on the ELA ELD framework, which is a grounding document around literacy in California. Therefore, as we move forward, we said in order for us to be able to ensure that students are reading by third grade, we have to recenter all of our work, all of the work that California is doing around this framework. So understanding that this variability with understanding the application, the use of the framework, I'm going to give a quick poll to see what your understanding of the framework is. And so the question is, how well do you know the ELA ELD framework? Is it new to you? It's somewhat familiar. I'm somewhat familiar with it. I'm quite familiar with it. It richly informs my practice, or I teach about it. Oh, I teach others about it. So I'll wait till we get to 80%. We are currently at 55. Keep it coming. Okay, we're almost there. A few more. Here we go. Okay, 8%, 7% more. And we're almost there. Okay, reaching 80. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Share the results. Wow, it's great. Many are familiar with it. Many are quite familiar with it. And for others, they're not only applying it, but they're teaching it. And then for others, this is a great introduction. So glad that you're here, because not only are you going to be learning about the ELA ELD framework throughout this series, but you're going to be hearing it from the 3 authors of the framework, which makes it even more impactful. Thank you very much for participating in that poll. The purpose of us putting together this framework is for the purpose of us putting together the Recentering California's ELA ELD Framework webinar series is so that we can familiarize educators with the contents of the ELA ELD framework, which include current relevance, her research foundations, organization by themes, and classroom applicability. It also includes support for best instruction, effective intervention, and the California Dyslexia Guidelines within a multi-tiered system of support, as well as promotion of multilingualism and biliteracy, culturally and linguistically affirming and sustaining instruction that is developmentally appropriate instruction for early learners. And without further ado, not without further ado, I'm not done yet. So with where you will see all of these components found is again in the remaining today's and then in the remaining sessions that we have. And our webinar series is going to be held on the second Tuesday of every month from 3:30 to 4:45. With October being focused on foundational skills, November on integrated and designated ELD and multilingual programs, December, language development, moving into meaning making in January, then effective expression in February, March, content knowledge. In April, we'll talk about assessment and intervention, which is going to be a great time because we're also, as was noted earlier, working on the screeners. So being able to talk about things that are relevant, such as that. And then in May, systems for implementation in the California Literacy Roadmap. And we hope to see everyone who's on here then. And if not, we are going to be recording the series. Each session will be available 1 to 2 weeks after on our CDE YouTube page and probably on another page in the near future. But for now, that's where you will find it. And you can always email myself, Nancy, or the statewide literacy campaign at cde.ca.gov if you have additional questions. And I am now going to turn it over to Nancy.
Thank you, Bonnie. So we'll begin with defining comprehensive literacy as we've discussed it in the framework. And the word comprehensive is apt here because it really is embracing many aspects of literacy. Comprehensive literacy instruction incorporates and integrates all strands: reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language. Moreover, all disciplines, English language arts, and other content areas. Literacy is used for learning across the curriculum. All 5 framework themes, and you'll hear more about those in a bit. The foundational skills, including phonics, word recognition, phonological awareness, fluency, and print concepts, meaning making, language development, effective expression, and content knowledge. Hallie will be talking more about these. Comprehensive English language development. We were the first and probably the only state to bring both English language arts, literacy, and ELD together, and really plow new ground in terms of establishing through our ELD standards integrated and designated ELD. You will hear more about that from Pam in a bit for every identified English learner student. And most importantly, evidence-based pedagogy, instructional materials, assessment, and interventions. The framework is rich in citations. Yes, it was a point in time, but it is held up. And as we proceed with this series, we'll be introducing you to further documents. To talk more about the development of the framework, then, let me turn to what that process was. You may know that the State Board of Education appoints an instructional quality commission. The IQC then appoints a framework committee that the board approves. Our chairs for that process were Becky Sullivan and Martha Hernandez. They shared that role. And the members of the committee represented a range of experiences, backgrounds, and expertise. And I believe half of the committee were classroom teachers. You know now that the lead authors were myself and Pam Spiescher and Hallie Yap-Slowick. The charge, I think, is helpful here. Drawing on research, develop a document that provides support for teachers, districts, publishers, professional learning providers, and teacher licensing programs in their work to implement ELA literacy and ELD standards and serve California's diverse populations. We began with how to bring together two sets of standards. Now, we know that the ELD standards were really designed to support and amplify the ELA literacy standards, but that was one of the first conceptual items that we all grappled with. If you want to know more about either set or both sets of these standards, see Chapter 1 in the framework. Then we designed some guiding principles for this effort. Things that were really important as we began to look at what comprehensive literacy should be based on those two sets of standards. That schooling should help all students achieve their highest potential. That the responsibility for teaching literacy is shared across all disciplines, the responsibility for literacy and language. That ELA literacy and ELD curricula and the accompanying instructional materials should be well-designed, comprehensive, and integrated. That effective teaching is essential to student success, and that motivation and engagement play crucial roles in learning. So those were our guiding principles. Those were augmented by shared values for educating multilingual and English learner identified students. Several of those, we've noted the pages for you here, pages 7 through 11 for both of these items, the guiding principles and the shared values. Some of those values include valuing language and culture as assets, attending to specific learning needs, ensuring intellectual richness in instruction, providing scaffolding, integrating the domains of communication. All of these led us to the work that you now have. And with that, I will share with you what the final product looked like. Displayed on this slide is an image of the front cover of the ELA ELD Framework, kindergarten through grade 12 for the state of California. Approved by the State Board of Education in 2014, it set the stage, and part of a framework, as you may already know, includes criteria for the adoption of recommended instructional materials. That took place in 2015. Other things that we did, we had a number of rollout sessions across the state to introduce the framework to people, but we also created an executive summary, a shorter version, about 31 pages, because, well, I'm gonna just not really say how many pages the full framework has, but it is a good, solid reference document. But the executive summary serves to be the quick view of it. And then we've expanded with many other resources. One of the key ones is also depicted on this slide, the resource guide to the foundational skills of the ELA literacy standards, which brings together all of the advice about teaching the foundational skills from transitional kindergarten through 5th grade into one document. So with that very brief overview, I'm going to now turn this to Hallie Yop-Slowick to talk more about the contents and organization. Thank you, Hallie.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy, and greetings to everyone who is here today. I'm going to start by just sharing a broad view of the organization and the content of the framework. So on the next slide, we display a big view again of the table of contents. In addition to a foreword and acknowledgments, there's an introduction. There are 12 chapters. Chapter 2 shares essential considerations for ELA and literacy and ELD curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Chapter 3 shares content and pedagogy for transitional kindergarten through grade 1, and I'm proud to say it draws on the preschool foundations, the work that has been done with our youngest learners in the state. Chapter 4 also addresses the same content pedagogy in terms of grades 2 and 3. Chapter 5, grades 4 and 5. Chapter 6, grades 6 through 8. Chapter 7, grades 9 through 12. This includes both the ELA standards as well as the literacy in the different subject areas. Chapter 8 addresses assessment. Chapter 9, access and equity. Chapter 10, learning in the 21st century. Chapter 11, high quality ELA literacy and ELD instruction, including professional learning, leadership, and program supports. And Chapter 12 provides information regarding instructional materials to support the standards, the California standards in English language arts and literacy and ELD. In terms of content, we have a graphic that displays the big picture of instruction as described in the framework. Let's build it on the next slide. Here we display an outer ring. This identifies the overarching goals of ELA and literacy and ELD instruction for students by the time they graduate from high school. California schools work toward having all students, by the time they graduate from high school, develop the readiness for college, careers, and civic life, attain the capacities of literate individuals, become broadly literate, and acquire the skills for living and learning in the 21st century. Each of these is discussed in the framework, especially in chapters 2 and 10, and those are certainly worth reading. How do we get to that outer ring, those overarching goals? We get there via grade level standards, which we have placed in the center of the graphic. These are the year-by-year pathways to achieving the goals identified in that outer ring. The standards in reading, in writing, in speaking and listening, and the language strands are relevant to and address all of the disciplines. Embedded within that circle are the California ELD standards, and those are designed to ensure that students who are English learners have full access to ELA literacy and other content standards. Notice this is in the heart of the graphic, in the inner circle, rather than outside of it and at arm's length, at a distance. Next in the graphic, circling these standards, are the cross-cutting themes of the standards. Rather than thinking about instruction in terms of the individual strands of reading, writing, listening, speaking, and language, or the individual parts of the ELD standards, interacting in meaningful ways, learning about how English works, and using foundational skills, and treating each of those in silos, we identified themes that cut across all of the strands and parts of those standards. The themes are meaning making. This is the purpose of engaging with any kind of text as a reader. It's also key in writing. We write to convey meaning, to express ideas, to share information. We speak and listen to share meaning. We learn language to express meaning. Thus, meaning making cuts across all strands in the ELA and literacy standards and in the ELD standards. Another theme is language development. The richness of our language impacts our ability to read. It impacts our writing, our speaking and listening, and at the same time is broadened through our engagement in each one of these acts. Thus, language development cuts across all strands and parts of the ELA literacy and ELD standards. Thus, it becomes one of the themes that we talk about in this framework. Another theme you'll see in those circles is effective expression. Reading standards guide students to see how a text can impact a reader, moving us to tears or to laughter or to anger or to action. How did the author do that? How did they effectively use language or diagrams or ways of organizing the text to impact us? How effective was the author convincing us of a point of view? Or how were the characters developed so that we began to resonate with them? How did the author piece together a plot to convey information about a concept or convey information about a concept? So effective expression is crucial when we think about the strand of reading, but it also matters in writing. It's at the heart of writing as well, as also at the heart of speaking and listening. How do we want to impact those who read our work? How do we want to impact those who are listeners or viewers of our work? And what do conventions contribute to effective expression to ensure that we have the impact that we communicate what we wish to communicate? And ELD, how does English work so that we use it to meet our needs, to express ourselves? Thus, effective expression is a theme that cut across all the strands: reading, writing, listening, speaking, and the parts interacting in meaningful ways and learning how English works. There are two more themes that we identified as we were working closely with these standards and thinking about how they might be implemented in the state of California. The fourth one is content knowledge. In terms of content knowledge, we've known for decades that knowledge impacts our comprehension of text. Knowledge is related to reading and how well we understand and pick up nuances and appreciate subtext in something that we are reading. It also impacts our writing. I write best about what I know. I speak better, and I'm able to listen better to what I already know about. But it also is the case that the reverse is true. In writing, in reading, in speaking and listening about information, about whatever the content is, I acquire even better reading skills, writing skills, speaking and listening skills, as I also am constructing more understandings and more knowledge. Finally, foundational skills. These give us access to printed language, allowing us to engage in all of the activities that I've just mentioned. They are crucial for and support achievement in all of the other strands. Thus, they are a key theme across any of the instruction that we are doing. These themes highlight the interconnections among the strands. Instead of having dozens and dozens individualized standards, we begin to see these standards in terms of what is the bigger picture of those standards? Where are they leading us? Where do we want to go with children? Are we ensuring that we're building meaning making in all the language arts? And as we engage with English learners, are we improving language development? Are we helping these children understand effective expression and ways to use language and images and so forth to convey meaning and to understand how others are using it to impact us? Are we building knowledge, and are we acquiring new knowledge? Are we sharing knowledge? And do we have the foundational skills that give us access to all of those other activities? Importantly, these themes overlap and interact. And Bonnie, I don't know if you can spin those again. Nope, she spun them earlier. That earlier animation, oh, here we go. Thank you. Shows that they overlap and they interact with one another. And notice now, Bonnie, next slide, that the circles have changed locations. that's to indicate that one is not more important than the other. There may be periods of time where one is given more emphasis, but every grade level addresses all of these, and they're all crucial. Finally, that open field that you see behind these circles represents the context in which instruction occurs. We assert in the framework that learning context must be motivating and engaging for all students, must be respectful of our children, of their families, of their backgrounds, of their cultures, of their communities, must be intellectually challenging for everyone, appropriately challenging for everyone, and should be integrated, because that's how we will best support growth in not only all of the ELA, literacy, and ELD standards, but across the entire curriculum when these standards are integrated into all areas of the curriculum. We're going to go quickly to an activity now. Would you please write one word to describe your reaction to the circles of implementation as a way of thinking about instruction? Bonnie will provide some instruction on how to do that.
Sorry about that. Yes. So if you could go to, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, menti.com. So www.menti.com, and enter the code if it's asked 41383419, or you can use your phone to take a picture of this QR code and participate in the Menti. So I'm going to leave this up for a second, and you'll see people are, thank you for your participation. And I may try to make this a bit bigger.
And Bonnie, I'll read that number again because there was a little number reversal there. 41383491. And I see we're getting a lot of responses already. I hope everyone is watching that. I'm seeing a lot of people said comprehensive, said integrated. I see thoughtful, I see reaffirming, I see multifaceted. And if is there any way you can make that just a little bit bigger, Bonnie? Thank you. Logical, insightful, context, clear and concise. Thank you. I'm glad that you think so. I think I saw one that said perplexing. We have lots of descriptions of this in the framework. And so please read chapter 2 to see that. Also, the executive summary does a nice job of summarizing this. But key here to understanding is that we use those themes to organize the framework, to think about instruction and curriculum. So it is crucial that one has an understanding of what they are. So I see synergistic in there as well. Thank you. May we move on? Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you all for doing that. I just want to share quickly before we hand this over to Pam that the framework, as I said, is organized around those themes when we talk about curriculum and instruction, but you will also find many, many other features within it. And two that I'll just point out right here are figures. There are figures throughout that one would find helpful, hopefully, like figure 2.23, essential features of designated ELD instruction. This is a wonderful figure to go to if you want to know what are some of those key features about designated ELD instruction. Figure 2.10, strategies for supporting learners' engagement with complex text. We want all children to have access with complex text. What are some strategies we can use? And this looks at all students, and it looks at how that is amplified or differentiated for linguistically diverse learners. Figure 4.4, comprehension strategies and descriptions. Figure 3.10 shares some of the terminology related to phonics and word recognition, including morphology. In the next slide, we see some examples of snapshots that are throughout the framework. These are windows into classrooms so you can see applied some of the concepts and discussions that are occurring in the framework. Snapshot 7.8 The Invisible Man, Cultivating Conversations About Literature. Snapshot 6.5, Making Inferences Using a Graphic Organizer. For grade 7, combining its integrating ELA and science. Snapshot 4.7, a biography tableau of American heroes. For grade 3, quite an integration of his ELA, history, social science, and theater. Snapshot 3.11, expanding sentences and building vocabulary for designated ELD related to ELA and social studies in grade 1. And more on ELA and on designated and integrated ELD from my colleague and friend, Pam Spiescher.
Thank you, Hallie. Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with my co-authors and with our new friend, Bonnie, and especially with all of you. We are so thrilled and we feel so honored to continue this journey with all of you. And it's just so amazing to have seen all of the work that you've been doing out there and be hearing about all the work that you are currently engaged in and are planning for the horizon. So I am going to share just a few additional resources in the framework that you can use to implement the 5 themes that Hallie just presented in a way that truly addresses both sets of standards. And I know that it probably feels like you're drinking from a fire hose right now, and we knew that going into this because we're trying to give you sort of the lay of the land. We want to share with you all sorts of different resources so that you can choose an entry point when you go back to your day job, I guess I should say, not this party. So one of the things that you will find in the ELD framework is a lot of guidance on California's, and Bonnie, if you could just maybe, thank you. A lot of guidance on California's model of comprehensive ELD, which includes 2 parts that must be happening together. It's not a choice. Can't choose just one or the other. It's both are included. It's both and. So the first part of California's model of comprehensive ELD, which is displayed on this on the slide, it's a snapshot from the framework from page 106, is integrated ELD. And integrated ELD is when and this happens across the disciplines. In all the disciplines where any EL identified student is a student in that classroom, the ELD standards are used in tandem with the ELA literacy and or other content standards or math standards or science standards, et cetera. And so that means that all of our EL identified students have access to that intellectually rich, high quality, grade level, standards aligned instruction, because that's what the ELD standards do. They help amplify instruction to provide access and equity. And then the other part of this comprehensive model is designated ELD. And that's a departure from past models of ELD where, ELD was not always integrated throughout the day. So we have our integrated ELD. But designated ELD, we understand that we also need to provide very specialized instruction for our multilingual learners who are learning English as an additional language. So designated ELD is a protected time during the day, where the ELD standards are the focal standards in ways that build into and from content instruction. That's just a little taste of what integrated and designated ELD is, and we're going to talk more about it in the November and December webinar. So we hope that you will come back for that. So on the next slide is displayed one of the tools that support your implementation of this model of comprehensive ELD. And this particular figure, I went through the framework and I counted 16 times that it appears and reappears. It first appears in chapter 2. But we felt so strongly that this figure is so critical to high quality instruction for all of our students that we wanted to repeat it. So you can see on the left, and this is really focused on planning, because we all know that without intentional planning, our instruction can be a little bit undermined. So on the left hand, you can see this is a snapshot of a figure that appears. And on the left-hand column, you can see framing questions that we want to think about when we're planning instruction for all of our students. Like, which standards am I implementing? What texts am I using? How complex are they? Etc. And then on the right-hand side, we're very explicitly calling out additional considerations that we want to keep in mind when we're planning instruction for our EL identified students, including which ELD standards am I using in tandem with my ELA literacy or other content standards. So that's just a tool that I would say, if you're a classroom teacher and you haven't seen this yet, I would grab that and start using it for planning. But that's not all, because we know that just providing a definition of integrated and designated ELD, plus there's a long explanation in chapter 2, and some framing questions for planning, that's not enough. That's not, and it's not fair, frankly, to expect classroom teachers to just make all of this up by yourselves. So on the next slide, you will see that in the framework, in all of the grade span chapters, there are pairs of ELA with integrated ELD and designated ELD vignettes. So there are 2 vignettes that go together, and they're in every single grade level until you get to grades 9, 10, 11, 12, because that matches our standards. And so there are vignettes there, but it's just a 9, 10, and 11, 12 one. And you can see, if you can see the titles in the chart here, which I'll read some of them. We have, beginning in the early grades, we have a lot of a big emphasis on oral retelling of stories, using complex texts, composing or writing stories, using the new language in those stories, both orally and in writing, and then also integrating across the grade levels a focus on the content area. So not only are we focusing on ELA literacy with ELD, but we're also focusing on literacy in the disciplines, particularly in science and history and social studies. So this just shows the TK5 vignettes, but it goes all the way up to 12th grade. I just want to make sure you know that. And on the next slide is displayed just a screenshot of the first page of the kindergarten ELA literacy vignette, and then the designated ELD vignette that goes with this. And what you'll find, Hallie mentioned earlier that there are snapshots. There's snapshots all over the grade span chapters, and I think in the systems chapters too. Yes, there are snapshots there too. And the snapshots are intended to be sort of moments in time. You walk into a classroom and this is what you see. And so it's great. So you can just pick it up and say, oh, that's really inspiring. I'm going to try that out. The vignettes are intended to be stories, a little more comprehensive story about what is happening in instruction and teaching and learning. So it provides the background, like what's been happening up to this point, what is the classroom like, and then it also includes things like the teacher interacting with students and providing engaging informative assessment practices, for example, and students engaging in formative assessment practices with one another. The other thing that the vignettes have is there's lots of little treasures in them. So there are actual lesson planning templates. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a lesson planning template for explicit vocabulary instruction that you can use. On the left-hand side in the snapshot, there is a sort of a 5-day plan for interactive read alouds using the same complex text to build children's reading comprehension skills and help them develop language. So on the next slide, just going to what is displayed is the 7th grade pair of vignettes, which is, as I said earlier, each grade span chapter includes not only ELA literacy, but also literacy across the disciplines. So in the 7th grade vignette, you can see an example of ELA literacy with science and integrated ELD. So the students are reading the book You Are What You Eat by Michael Pollan, and they're analyzing it, unpacking it, trying to figure out how as Hallie was saying, they're not only working on their rhetorical skills to understand how authors are persuasive or establish their credibility, et cetera, but they're also unpacking the language to understand what specifically students are doing. And in the designated ELD vignette, you'll see a very detailed explanation of how the students are going a little deeper with that text analysis, where they're looking at the text organization and how the author establishes cohesion across the text and what kind of language is used to be persuasive. So this is just a little taste. Hopefully it will inspire you to either take a look at the vignettes for the first time, check them out, explore them, or return to them, because honestly, the vignettes are intended to be used as a sustainable professional learning tool that you can return to over and over again to explore the different layers. So on the next slide, so the vignettes are primarily for teachers. They're stories that teachers can read and be inspired by and see themselves, see the things that they're already doing and feel very validated, which is fantastic. I once had a teacher high school teacher who called me over. I was using the vignettes in professional learning. He said, come over here. I said, oh, I don't know what he's going to say. Maybe he doesn't like the vignette. They said, who wrote this? And I said, well, I wrote this with the other authors of the framework. And he said, this is my classroom. I see myself in this. And so they're very intentionally designed to provide not only validation for all the wonderful things teachers are already doing, but give them a little aspiration and some new ideas. In chapter 11, if you are a teacher leader or administrator or literacy coach, there are 2 snapshots that will help give you some ideas for how to engage teachers in that professional learning around the vignettes that I was just talking about. And so just a little pitch for the vignettes. For me, I've done a lot of professional learning across the state on the ELA ELD framework and the ELD standards. The vignettes are my entry point because they are stories that we can talk about. We can examine our own current instruction, reflect on it, and then we can set goals for where we want to go next. So that's just a little pitch. And on the next slide, I am going to hand things over to my lovely friend, Hallie.
Actually, I'll
Oh, sorry, my lovely friend, Nancy.
We're all friends.
We're all friends.
We would, and many of you have been asking in the Q&A, where can we find links to everything? And we are about to share with you a link in the chat that will give you not only general links, but also particular grade level practical guidance, grade by grade, chapter by chapter. And we'd like you to spend a few minutes to find something in that document, open it up, find a grade level that would be of interest to you, and click on either the overview of the span or the specific grade level, and you'll see there several suggested page numbers, perhaps a figure or a snapshot or a vignette, or maybe a bulleted list of tips for teaching. So thank you, Bonnie, for sharing what this document looks like. And so we want to give you a few moments to take a look at this, and then we'll just ask you what you found helpful. So this is time for you to explore some of the places in the framework that the chapter number is a link to the actual PDF document where you can follow and find those items. We'd like to ask you now to just share with us what you explored or what you found that was beneficial during your exploration. Here is another menti.com. Bonnie, if you could help us with instructions.
Yes, so if you can either use your phone to take a picture of this QR code, or again, go to www.menti.com and enter code. If I get this backwards, please correct me. 4771810. And I'll leave the QR code up a bit before I move on. Looks like there's some responses. Just one word response. What did you find beneficial during your exploration?
I will say that one of the reasons that the framework is as long as it is the framework committee kept asking us for more and more examples of classroom practice. So we kept adding snapshots, which you'll notice that many of those are integrated with content areas and really deepening the vignettes. So I don't apologize for the length of the document because it's meant to support teachers in the grades that they're teaching. All right. Well, thank you so much. Very practical ideas. Yes, we think so. And so this is a list that you can take with you and use in future. And in fact, as we look at this next slide, we're suggesting that you should think about how you might like to access this document. It's not meant to be read all at once. So some possible modes, we're calling this, what adventure will you choose? You're going on an adventure to learn about this framework. So you could be reading it individually or studying it in a grade level meeting, looking at different sections in a faculty meeting, maybe an expert groups, a professional learning community, a book group, more. You're all very creative. So it's intended to be a document for professional learning. Where do you start? I know that's an obvious question. And the opening chapters are really visionary and descriptive of the overall. A grade level chapter, especially if you're a practicing teacher, that'd be where I would start, or the systems level chapters. How do you make this happen in your school? The executive summary for a quick start, particularly good for administrators, or the resource guide to foundational skills, extremely helpful. And then you may not have realized that we have extracted, I didn't do this, but lovely people in CFER extracted all of the figures and snapshots and vignettes, and they're in collections, and those are linked to that document that was in the Google document that you just used. It's the very last page. So think about this and think about what we will be doing in our next session. Several of you asked, when is the framework going to be updated? And we don't have the definitive answer to that, except to say that the math framework was just approved, and now there will be a new mathematics adoption. And there's a time period between the adoption of mathematics and ELA, ELD that we are required by statute to have. And so, and then there's been discussion that perhaps it doesn't need to be completely rewritten, but updated. So we'd be interested in your advice, particularly with regard to not only updates to the framework, because we know there are things like the dyslexia guidelines to include, but also the timing of a new comprehensive instructional materials adoption. With that, I will leave you and hand it back to Bonnie.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Dr. Yap. Thank you, Dr. Speecher, for all of the information and knowledge that you imparted on us today. We are excited to have the next upcoming session on October 10th, where we get to focus on foundational skills, and we are featuring the speaker, Dr. Mary Lou Borno-Tempini. So she will be on. We're very excited to have her. What I am going to do is enter in the chat a feedback survey. We would love to get information on your thoughts regarding today's session, how we can make improvements for the next session, and anything else that will help us and inform our own instruction and meet the needs of all those in California. Thank you for being here. We want to make sure that we are, again, meeting our outcomes, understanding the definition of what is comprehensive literacy, understanding the elements that are depicted from the circles of implementation, and identifying the resources that come with the ELA ELD framework that support instruction, understanding the definitions of integrated and designated ELD, and identifying the next steps to dive deeper into the framework. And so I believe we've touched on and met these outcomes. And for us to meet the final outcomes of diving deeper, if you could please, again, enter or fill out the survey. It's a quick survey, and let us know how we can do that. For our contact information, here it is. I always like to say I use this photo because it's one of my best ones. So there it is. And thank you for being here. You can always reach out to Nancy and I, and our phone numbers are listed here. If there are any questions, again, go ahead and email us, and we look forward to having you all on our next adventure, October 10th. Thank you.